Oh. Hello.
Hello?
Hello, welcome to the workshop.
Hello.
How is everyone?
I didn't even know Frooks was over there.
That's what I noticed first. It's like perfect. The whole gang's here.
Same damn place. Do you know we say we're going to be here at the same place at the same time? That's taking it too literal.
There he is.
Hello, Emerald. Hello, Ballarat.
Hello.
Balazus, Apex Rex.
Hi,
Strainer. Lasolus. Hello, welcome to workshop.
Rampa. Hello.
Hello, Rampa. Yeah, sorry about last week, by the way. I was a bit groggy. And we didn't have a bloody clue. There was supposed to be a different workshop going on, but obviously that couldn't be done because of Nexland's connection issues he's having right now. So... This chat isn't working.
I just noticed.
There.
There.
But yeah, we were going to be doing streamer cameras and stuff that day, but obviously Nexland needs to cover that one. So, yeah. Yeah, your question was the first question, yes. However, what we are going to be doing with the workshop is we're going to be recovering some of the past topics again. Because we lost the videos for them. And we're going to be redoing some of our other bits and pieces as well. But today, Raivi and Aegis wanted to redo something, so we're going to be revisiting that today.
Yep, we're
Although
going to
slightly
be
differently, yes.
Oh. And Cinder, yeah.
But yes, today we're going to be redoing the elevator that we made a while ago in a slightly different fashion, as well as going over lights and the light component.
Yeah.
And light tools.
And
Yes.
there might be a little bit of something else thrown in just for extra measure. Which we might, but we don't know yet. Because we were actually going over some of the stuff, and we were like, oh yeah, we haven't done dynamic variables yet. We haven't done dynamic impulses. And the thing is, as I say, we do need feedback from you guys as well, by the way, of what you'd like to see covered. Because last night I was sat there, and Aegis is like, what are we doing tomorrow? And then Raivi messages me like, I've got no idea what we're doing tomorrow. And I'm like, oh crap. It's too early in the morning, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Why are you always there? Why? Why?
He's a
Why?
statue. I don't think he's gonna answer.
I think he's in his desktop.
That's their spot.
That is very
He's
much
been-
his spot, yeah. Okay, so... Yeah, who's going first, then?
I guess I'll start with the elevator.
Loving an elevator. Okay, I'll give you the camera.
And we'll begin. Alrighty. So, currently, if we head over here, this is our current elevator that was shown how to make here, but we lost that video, unfortunately. But it has 2 floors, and you can choose where you want the elevator to go, like this.
Using the slider component.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I'm thinking we should probably, when we cover the slider component again, we'll have something much more, well, useful to use for a slider component, like the lights, for example, inside the house.
Yes.
But that'll be another stream.
However, what
definitely.
we wanted to do with the new elevator was figuring a way to utilize the UIX knowledge that we just went over and make it a multi-floor elevator. Because sometimes you want more than just 2 floors, for example. And we're going to use UIX for this, and a little bit of logics. First thing we're going to need to do is get rid of our current elevator, because I think we can... Yeah, we can use the floor, but I think this time
Don't
we're
need
gonna
the
want a
control
ceiling.
panel.
Emerald, remember to water your fruits on a regular basis. Ramper says, buttons this time, including call buttons?
Yes, including call
Exactly.
buttons.
How many times
what
have
I'm
you
gonna-
asked for that, Ramper?
Let's see, elevator platform. Is this all inclusive? Let's see.
Oh, okay.
Sorry guys, stream's over. Ryuvi's dead.
Let me fix that. There we go.
You brought me back from the dead. That's what happens when you disable yourself. So let's fix that.
Let me. Oh, I was about to
Also, hi,
unparent you.
Nex.
Okay, that works.
Ruby. I hope I'm not repaired.
Nope, I don't see you under
Okay.
it. That's good.
Well, the inspector was under it, but that's okay. Wait, don't
We
close
can
the...
delete.
No!
Happened. There we go.
Great. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
where
gonna.
was I?
I'll tell you what. Let me just. I'm gonna help you out here, Ryuvi, a minute. Where
Okay.
are we? Just I can't. If I can find it. If I can find my tool. We'll just put him down there.
Wait, what?
There.
Great. Sure.
How dare.
I'm stealing the show now. Anyways, after that fiasco, we have no elevator. Well, we don't even need that, so we're gonna make a new one. And to make it nice and centered, I'm gonna take our cone mesh, which has an origin right in the middle, and I'm going to add underneath it a new child, and then move this new child. Who grabbed it? Because yes, that's still grabbable. That's another reason why we're making this. I'll put this under structures. I'm gonna call it new elevator. So I'm going to make this a cylinder. And you can normally throat, please. Normally you can make a cylinder using the dev tip and the create new 3D model cylinder field. But today I decided to do it and show you how to do it with a component. So you can make a cylinder through an inspector by going to Assets, Procedural Meshes, Cylinder Mesh. And here we have a cylinder mesh, but it doesn't render because it doesn't have a renderer. So we can click on the component itself, set up renderer, and now we have a cylinder. I'll move it up a little bit. Great. But we want the cylinder to be a little bigger, so let's get it appropriately sized. I think it's about 2.5. This should be good. And let's set the sides to 32. Let's also set the height to 0.1. That, yeah, that's good enough. And now I'm going to give this elevator a parent. So because I want to give this elevator not just a floor, but a ceiling. So let me just rename this to new elevator. And this one will be our floor. Now I'm going to duplicate it, which you can duplicate a slot in the inspector with a green button here, which is duplicate. I'm going to call this ceiling. And I'm going to move the ceiling up, I don't know, about there to accommodate our larger users. Let's give this a more accurate number, actually. Let's make that 3.5 meters. Our floor can be at 0. Great. So, I'm going to move this down a little bit so that it's almost flush with the ground, so that you don't have to jump to get up on the platform. And now we have a basic, self-contained elevator thing. There is one more thing that we need to add, though, is collision, because when you make a mesh using the inspector like this, you set up a renderer, but it doesn't give it any kind of collision. So we need to give it a collider as well. And we can do that under Attach, Component, Physics, Colliders, Cylinder Collider. And I need to get the height and radius values here from our mesh and place them down in our collider. And I'm also going to enable Character Collider so that we collide with it. I can demonstrate this by walking up onto it. And I collide with it. Great. And I'm going to do this with the ceiling, Attach Component, Physics, Colliders, Cylinder Collider. And we need to get the height and radius values from here as well. And we need to enable Character Collider. Great. Now with this new elevator, I'm going to give it another parent. And I'm going to call this Elevator System. And I'm also going to grab under here, or duplicate, or, sorry. I'm also going to select this slot and click the star icon to make a new child, and call this Logics. Because we are going to need logics for this. Now one more thing I'm going to add to the elevator is a button panel. So to do this, I'm going to add a new child using the yellow star and call it Panel. Here I'm going to attach component, assets, procedural meshes. This time we're going to want a box, and I'm going to set up a renderer. Now we don't want our panel to be this massive, so I'm going to change its scale here and make it small on Z, a little smaller on X, and not so tall on Y. And I'm going to move this up, I don't know, about here, and over here. Out there. I'm going to deselect so I can see it. Now we have a panel. And it doesn't necessarily matter if it has collisions or not, because, well, we're going to put a handy-dandy UIX canvas on it to act as our button panel. But before I do that, I'm going to set up a couple of things on our elevator. And the things we'll need here for how we're going to set this up is a value field, a value multiplexer, and a Boolean value field. So let me get the fields first. First thing we need is a value field, which, by the way, can be found under Data, Value Field, and we want a float. The reason we want a float is because we want this elevator to move up and down on one axis. So instead of defining a position as a float 3, we just want to move it on 1, and we'll do the handy-dandy logics magic with just this value. We're also going to need a data value field bool. And finally, we're going to need a very handy component that can be utilized for a lot of things under utility, which is the value multiplexer. We're going to need this of type float. Now, the value multiplexer allows you to, given an index and a list of values, you can pick one and have it be the value that you want. In this case, we're going to derive our float value here from our value multiplexer target. And I'm going to put in some dummy values here in the list, just so that we have something to go off of. So as you can see, index 0 is 0. If I set this to 1, it's 10, and 2, it's 20 in this case. This is what we're going to be controlling to change the vertical position of the elevator. So now that we have this set up, I'm going to go back to the panel, and I'm going to add a new child, and call it canvas. And just like we did for the UIX videos, or sessions I should say, we're going to go under UIX and add a canvas. And I'm going to scale this canvas down pretty small so that we can see it. There it is. And I'm also going to move it forward so that it's not inside the cube, like so. Now, this is a very wide canvas, and I want it to fit the cube, so I'm going to scale it. Let's see, what could fit here? Oh, 500 and 1000. Perfect fit. Great. Now, under our canvas, I'm going to add a new child and add it, or call it background. And on this, I'm going to add a UIX graphics image. And since we're going with our control panel, if you recall, back in the main building, we are going with a dark mode for our UI. So I'm going to give this a nice dark color. Something like that. Now underneath this background, I'm going to add a vertical layout. And I'll mention again, since I've said it before, but the names of these slots for UIX does not matter. I'm just naming these things so I know what they are. But on here, I'm going to add a UIX layout, vertical layout. And this is going to contain our vertical list of buttons on where we want the elevator to go. So I'm going to give it 10 pixels of padding on all sides, and 10 pixels of spacing between our buttons. Now, under our layout, I'm going to add a new child, and for the time being, I'll call it floor. And I'm also going to give it a image. And I'm also going to give it a UIX interaction button, since we want it to be interactable. So now when I hover over it, it is a button. Great. Now, we want this button to have some text so we know what floor we're going to, and it's not just a block. So I'm going to give this button another child, call it text, and add a UIX graphics text. Now, to make our lives easier, if we ever want to make new floors, I'm actually going to set this text to be the name of the slot that it's under, so that if you want to rename a floor, you just rename the button. To do this, we just need a value copy, which can be found under Transforms, Drivers, scroll all the way down to Value Copy. We want this of type string. I'm going to grab the content here in the text and put that under the target. And I'm going to go up to our button here, grab its name, and place that as the source. And now you can see the text is the name of said slot, floor. But it's awkwardly in the corner. So I'm going to set its horizontal line to center and vertical line to middle, so that it's nice and in the center. And for the sake of doing right things, we can check these and make sure that it aligns properly, regardless of how big the text is and whatnot. And we'll leave the text as black while we're at it. Okay, we have a button that does absolutely nothing. Now we want it to actually set the value that we want. So I'm going to deselect And I'm going to go back to our button and attach a common UI button interactions button value set component of type integer. And the reason we're using integer is because if we go back to our value multiplexer that we put in the elevator, you can see it has an index value. This index value is an integer. So we're going to take this index value and go back to our button. The value we want to set is that index, and since in this case this will be the first floor, we want to set 0. So that when we click the button, it sets our multiplexer to that value. Now, another thing I would like to add to this is to show the user what floor you're at. And to do that, we can attach two things. First of all, we want to check where the elevator is, so we can use a value equality driver found under transform drivers. And we want to check integer. The value we want to check is the one that we just used here, which is the index of our multiplexer. And we're going to check that against, in this case, 0. And if the value of our multiplexer is 0, then it will give us a true value as the target. And all we want to change is the color of the button between two values. And we can do that with a transform drivers Boolean value driver of type color, with the state here going to the target. Let's set our false value to say gray, so it's not so screaming bright. Hello, glass. That's cool. And let's set our true value to a nice blue color. And we're going to be driving our base color here in the button, like so. Great. Now, since the button is checking if it's equal to 0 and the index is already 0, then this button is active. Okay, so we have the button, and for all intents and purposes, this is all we really need for these buttons. Although there is one more thing, and I want to have it so that when the elevator is moving, you can't go and spam the buttons and mess with the system. And we can do that by disabling the buttons when we don't want people to interact with them. Which, while I'm here, I'm going to set the disabled color a little bit darker, so that when it's disabled, it's nice and dark, like so. And this is why we created on the elevator this Boolean value, so that we can just take this value and copy it to the buttons to tell when the elevator is moving. So we can just do that with a simple value copy using transform drivers value copy of type bool. We're going to be copying to the enabled state of the button, and we're going to be copying from our Boolean value that we made here on the elevator. And I'm going to go and enable it so that these buttons don't automatically start disabled, like so. And it looks like the glass that Aegis has put around here is a little small, so I'm going to put the panel a little bit inside. There we go. Great. We now have a button that is exactly what we want, but it still does nothing. Now, ultimately what we're going to want here is 3 floors. So I'm going to take our button here, duplicate it twice, and for the sake of just having these for now, we can always rename them later. I'm going to call the second one floor 2, and the third one floor 3. And as you can see, the order in the list here is exactly the same order as in the inspector. Good to know. Now, we have our buttons, but they're set to the wrong floor. You'll see they're all active. Well, that's because we need to have it so that it sets and checks the value of the floor that it's representing. In this case, floor 2 would be a value of 1. And we need to change that both for the button set and the value equality driver. And floor 3 is a value of 2 for both of these areas. Great. Now, when we click any of these buttons, it sets that active floor. This is also how a method for you to do radio buttons, where only one can be active at a time, for example. But these buttons still don't do anything, and that is where our logics comes into play. I'm going to hop out here, and I'm going to swap to my logic step. And with the logic step, I'm going to get myself a node browser, and the quintessential movement node we're going to be using for this is underneath actions, and it is tween, the lovely tween node. Now what this does is this, given an impulse, this allows you to provide a from value and a to value and a duration, and given what you want to drive, it will go from that value to the other value over a set amount of time, which is exactly what we need. So instead of guessing how long the elevator will take to move, we can define how long we want it to take to move. In this case, the value that we want to be driving is the elevator's position. So I'm going to pop out the elevator's interface card, which I did that by grabbing it and pressing secondary. And I'm going to take the position and plug it into this interesting light blue value. And in doing so, it converts the node to float 3 and gives us this neat little reference arrow, which I'm just going to plop right there. We don't need this interface card anymore. Now, we want to have it so that whenever we change the floor, the elevator will go to the new destination. And, conveniently, we have a value that we can check when it changes. So, we're going to check when our float value here changes. And we can do that using flow fire on change. This node, even though it's pink at first, you can plug any kind of value into it, and it will detect and fire up an impulse whenever it changes. This also needs a firing user, so let's have this only fire on the host user, so that we don't have any kind of weird double impulses and whatnot. Okay? So we're going to plug this into the tween. So whenever our set value changes here, it will tween. Well, we want to tween to whatever this value is on the y-axis for our elevator. The reason it's the y-axis is because if we select it and look at the gizmo, y is up, and we want this elevator to go up. So, this is a float 1. We can't just plug it into a float 3. We have to combine it into one, which we can do that under operators, and we want a pack XYZ node. This allows us to provide an X, Y, and a Z, and it outputs a float 3. So we're going to plug this into Y, which is the axis we want to change, and this will go to the to. Now, what needs to go into the from is where we want it to start tweening from to get to where we want it to go. And if we leave this blank, it will always start at 0, 0 and go up to, say, floor 3. So say you're at floor 2 and you want to go up to floor 3 and you leave this blank, then it will immediately down to 0 and go from 0 to 3 instead of just going from floor 2 to floor 3, for example. So we need to provide the elevator's current position into from, and we can get that under transform, local transform. And we have position. So now I'm going to grab our elevator again, pop out its interface card, it's sideways, and we're going to grab the slot here and plug it into the local transform, giving us a reference to the elevator. Now we can choose a duration for how long we want this to last. In this case, I'm just going to pick 3 seconds. This is in seconds, by the way. But you can set that to whatever value you like. I'm also going to pop out an input for the curve preset, which basically describes how it will animate over time. Linear is, well, linear. It has constant speed from start to end. You also have sine, which is like a sine wave, cosine, smooth, and smoother. In our case, we're going to use smoother, so it's a nice and smooth ride. Finally, I want to have it so that this Boolean value is true only when the elevator isn't moving. And to do this, we can utilize the outputs we have on the tween, which is on started and on done. Basically, this will fire when the tween begins to run, and this will fire when the tween finishes, in this case after 3 seconds. So, we want a value that is only on from 2 impulses. Oops, that's mildly cursed. But to do that, we can go under flow and give ourselves a Boolean latch. And I'm going to put this a little bit here because we're going to say, okay, when it starts, we're going to turn it off. And when it finishes, we're going to turn it back on, which what it's turning on and off, by the way, is this value right here. Which this value is, I'm going to set it on for now. This value is exactly what we want for this Boolean value here to turn on and off our buttons. So, I'm going to grab our Boolean value field here, pop out its interface card, and I'm going to take our Boolean latch value and drive our value float value. Great. However, we also want to have it so that while you're moving, these buttons, you can't, even if these buttons weren't disabled, we don't want to have it so that you can, what's the word? You can't have stacked tweens, that is. So we want to have it so you can't send more pulses even while this thing is moving. So we need an if, and I'm going to plug this right in here, and we're going to check if our buttons are enabled to the pulse. This is just kind of an absolute fail-safe way so that the system doesn't accidentally get unsynced. Also, what I was just making here, if you haven't seen, I haven't used these very much, is relays. You can just aim at any wire and grip, and it'll make a little relay, which these are great for organizing your logics, as you can see here. And this is pretty much the bulk of the logics. So I'm going to grab our logics here, logics slot, and I'm going to open a context menu, set packing route like we usually do, hold secondary until that circle is complete, aim at the logics we want to pack, and let go. Now there is one thing we are missing, and that is a character parenter for this elevator, so that when you're on it, you move with it. Which I'm going to do that outside of the elevator. To do that, I'm going to add a new slot under the elevator, and call it, if I can spell, wow, parenter, there we go. I'm going to add a physics colliders cylinder collider. We're going to set this to trigger, and let's adjust the radius and such to match our elevator, which I think is these values. I'm gonna move it up to about there. And I'm going to attach to this a locomotion interactions character parenter. So, if I go and walk into it, I'm now parented under parenter. And if I did everything correctly, I should be able to click floor 2, and we go up to our defined floor 2 position, which is absolutely not correct, but you can see it works. We just need to tweak the end values.
Floor 2.
How about... and Wraith got some sounds. Great.
Floor 3. Floor 1.
Those are perfect. So one thing we're missing that I'm sure Rampa 3 will be very happy to know is call buttons. And I designed this interface here to be such so that to have a call button, all we have to do is duplicate our panel, attach it outside of our elevator. I'm going to bring it just so that it's over here. And on this panel, I'm going to navigate its hierarchy and delete 2 of these 3 buttons because we only need 1. I'm going to rename this to call elevator, And I'm also going to make the canvas a little bit less tall. Let's say 250. And we need to adjust our box height accordingly. Which I think these values will suffice. Yes. Perfect. Now, we also want our elevator to call to a specific point. So, in this case, hello. In this case, 0. So if I click it, it disables, and the elevator comes to whatever value we want it to. And you can see it turns blue when it's on the floor that we want, because that's what we set up earlier with the Boolean value driver and the value equality driver. So now, I'm going to rename this to call... That's not how you spell floor. Floor 1. And I'm sure Aegis can put this somewhere a little bit more pretty, but for the time being, I'm going to put that one there. And then I'm going to duplicate it and go up about here. Call floor 2. And I'm going to go under our button and change its values to associate with this floor, which in this case is 1. And finally, I'm going to do this one more time so that we have a call floor 3. I'm going to move it up. And once again, go to the call elevator button and set its values accordingly. Like so. Now the last thing that we really need to get going, at least for the functionality of the elevator, is to get the actual positions correct. And to do that, I can just say, okay, what is the proper position for floor 2? Let's say about there, which is a value of 6.4. So floor 2 is going to go to 6.4. Bye. And floor 3 is a value, I'm hoping it's a nice round number, 12. Cool. 12. So, now, let's go to floor 1. We're on floor 1. We can go to floor 2. We go to floor 2. And if we go to floor 3... Floor 3. Oh, it doesn't line up quite. But that's okay, I can just lower the elevator, get our number, plug it in there. And go back down. Okay. Well, given we have 20 minutes, I think that's time. Aegis, would you like to... Oh, you're doing your thing there. Perfect. I just, after you're done there, I think we can transition to talking about how to make a light. And while he does that, I can set up these sounds. Aegis, where are you?
There we go.
Right,
there you are.
Let me give Aegis the camera.
All right. So we want a light on this elevator, yeah? Because we have a nighttime version of this world, and we want people to use the elevator even if it's really dark out. Oh? How do we go ahead and make a light?
I think when we cover dynamic variables and stuff like that, we'll cover how to automatically change the lights from nighttime to daytime, but since we still have some time, we can cover how lights work in the first place. So within... let me bring out a menu here. There we go. So, there are tools within Neos's default tools to spawn out lights, not just using the dev tooltip, but there are tools that we got here. The light tip, and the directional tip, and the dev tooltip, of course. So I have them all spawned out here. So Let's start with the light tip here. Most simple tool in regards of lighting. So upon equipping it, when you press the trigger, it spawns out the light. But if you, while you're holding the trigger, and you have the light still spawned out, and you click and drag away from the light, it increases or decreases the range of said light. In this case, it's a point light by default. And then when I let go, it creates it. And it's a simple light that it can pick up, scale, and when I scale it, it scales the light accordingly as well. And if I poke it or click it, it's a simple toggle switch on and off built into the light itself. Although you could probably delete the toggle switch or visual on the light if you want to just have the light itself, but it's a pretty good way of quickly placing around lights. Now, another thing that not much users know is if you hold down secondary. Or was it secondary? Hold on. There we go. It's a little bit trickier on the index, but you can change the color
Floor 2.
of the light tip quickly by holding secondary and sliding your thumb across the touchpad. So I can just create this blue light right here, just like so. But there's another easier way of doing it as well. So if I open up the hand menu, we got all these different options here. Let's start with change color. And it's just like any other normal color dialog. As you can see, when I spin around this color wheel, it changes the color. I can adjust the color here too. Of course, I can adjust it in the inspector as well too, with the proper numbering of each value. And if you're wondering what this white slider is, it increases its gain, which just adds a whole bunch more brightness and bloom to the light as well. So we got this night. Actually, a good tip when doing lights, if it's like a solid color light, it's not as realistic to how light will react in the real world. So adding a little bit white would make the light much more realistic in regards of how it would bloom or bright or reflect off of surfaces. So we have this nice warm tinted color, and we can now play around with the shadows actually. So there's 3 modes of shadows. So right now they're disabled. Now with shadows, they can take performance, but it depends on how you set up your lighting and how important the lights you want to have shadows to be. So in this case, there's none. So if I turn on hard shadows, and I turn it on here, you can see the shadow of my hand on the floor there. And the shadows of Ryuvi and Wraith, and even the inspectors as well. Well, for me locally, you're casting shadows because you're visible to me, Wraith. And yeah, the shadows right now have a hard edge. So simply if I change it to soft shadows, delete this one, spawn out another, the shadows have a little bit of a blending edge to it. Let me see Ryuvi's shadow. Now, the next thing here is you got these 3 options as well. The point, the spot, and the sun. Point is like a point light, basically shining in every single direction. You also got the spotlight, which is only showing a certain area, and you can change the angle of the spotlight in the inspector as well too. And change the range, the intensity of each light as well. And as for the sun, if you select this option in the light tip, it basically changes to this tool. This tool is just the shortcut tool, just also in the Neos Essentials, or Essential Tools, my bad. And if I point at this, I change the sun in the world. Although I think there's a second sunlight in here for lighting. Actually, I'm going to take a look at this real quick. Map assets, sunlight. I'm curious, because I think there was a way that it can make this light tip affect the sun. Directional light items. Is that what it was? What's the... Well, actually, this is a good segue into lights themselves, into light components. So, in this case, we're looking at the light itself, which is over there, which is showing its direction, where it's shining down, which I think the Y, the Y forward, or Y up in this case, is where the sunlight is shining down on the world.
Actually, I do believe it is Z up.
Z up?
For that, are we talking about that light over there?
Yeah, the sunlight.
Yes. So for spotlights and directional lights, it is the forward axis, or the Z up axis, that is the direction that it shines.
Huh. The more you know.
Good to know.
So, looking at the light here, it's the same thing. I can change it to a spotlight or a point light, and it will change the light selected. And now a directional light will also affect the skybox as well, the procedure one by default. We can cover skyboxes in a bit later because I'm not sure if we'll have enough time.
It's funny, by the way, Ryuvi, that you mention about things shining Z up. That was exactly the same way that Second Life did it with their meshes. Their meshes used to shine Z up. So you actually if you were making a light, you'd actually have to do it upside down in your 3D modeler.
Interesting. So you can see some of the similar aspects here. You got the color. If I click on this, I can change the color. I can also change the color via the RGB and alpha values. I can also change the shadow type. So hard, soft. If I turn it to soft shadows, you can see that the shadows are now being casted on the world. But I'm going to turn them off for now. I can also change the shadow strength, actually. I'll keep that on for a bit. So if I do this 0.1, the shadows are very faint. And you can change the resolution of the shadow map, which basically is how detailed the shadows are.
If left at 0, it will be automatic.
Yep. And the range is self-explanatory for like point lights and spotlights. The spot angle is how wide the spot angle is. Now, actually, shadow near plane. I don't know what that is.
So, generally from what I have messed with, the shadow near plane works when you have the shadow type set to anything other than none, and adjusting that value will adjust how things close to the light will render shadows, because sometimes if you have a light and it's casting shadows and you have something that's close to it, the item that's close to it might not cast a shadow because it's too close to where the shadows are being cast from, so you can adjust your value there to adjust accordingly.
So it's like a camera near clipping.
Yes, except for shadows.
So that explains sometimes I had to like move my hand away from the light to get the shadow. Yeah, that makes sense now. And now one thing I wanted to kind of save for last is the cookie. Now what a cookie is, yes, is a image. So what I am going to do as well is, in the meanwhile, show how you can also spawn light using the dev tool. So in order to do that, you have to have it equipped, and you go to create new, light, right there. Now you got these three. In this case, I'm going to do a spotlight. You can do a cookie for point and spot. The easiest one to start is with the spotlight. Hiccup. So we got here is this gizmo here, and you can kind of drag it in and out of how big you want the spotlight to be. You have all these different rudimentary options here.
I think... Oh, no.
I do believe
That's
we...
concerning.
Oh, there he is.
Oh.
I was about to say, I thought we'd lost Aegis then for a moment.
Ooh.
What?
You completely
Yeah,
lagged out.
I think your internet lagged out for a minute.
That's why I heard the steam noise. Weird. I was like, wait, did something disconnect? Possibly. Did I explain the gizmo real quick, or
The last thing you did is you clicked on the directional option.
Okay. Well, simply when you spawn it out using the dev tooltip, and I don't see this often used. A lot of people use the light tip or use it component-wise. You can click and drag the different parts of the gizmo to adjust the different, lights. Though the only downside to this, you have to select the light itself in order to change it. So in this case, I'll go to the point light. It still says spotlight, but that's because I have it started as a spotlight. So I will change it back to a spotlight here and rotate it so it's facing the ground. And now I'm going to search for an image to use as a cookie. And a cookie is kind of like an image projected on there. Now, let's see here. Yes, essentials. Did I lag out again? No. Good. Don't know what that was. So I'm going to browse through Neos Essentials on the textures and particle sprites. That should be good example. Here, let's try this one. So we have this nice looking glint or shine object here as our cookie. Now, how cookies work, they have to be like a square image in resolution. So if it's like a 256 by 256 texture, it will work. And it also has to be black and white or monochrome. So I can just place it there. And that's interesting. I think it was alpha. That's what I was wondering about. Okay.
Please use alpha.
I thought it was black and white. My bad. I was thinking of something else. So I will do alpha from intensity. And here we go. Now, sometimes when you have a light being shown on the ground, you might see it repeat over and over on like other objects. There's a way to fix that. You go to the image itself that you adjusted, and you go to the wrap mode U and V. You set those both to clamp. That should hide any repeating patterns.
I did not know that.
Yep, it's a weird glitch that I found out, but I think that's just how the mapping works. So, that's pretty much 2D cookies. Now, 3D cookies is a little bit different. And also, what people have done is they took a image, like a color image, and broken down into its different values, red, green, and blue. And if you put those as 3 different projector lights, you can make a color projection like that. I thought it was a pretty neat thing. And I've did it myself as well too, but with a 3D cube map. Point light
Ooh.
cookie. So that's why this little prism here with all these different sharp cells with different colors. Oh, here we go. Now that's better. And yes, you can make disco balls with this. Actually, the first object that had this feature was a disco ball. I don't know where it is. I know Fruix has it. But it's like a disco ball that changes colors as well. So how this works, I'm going to open this up. So in order how I think I'm going to have to cover cube maps by itself, which will be when we cover textures and procedural meshes again. So opening this up, you see the 3 different lights here. The red and the green and the blue values all here. And I'm going to get the cube map, which is also in the cookie. So this is what... Yes, I like projection like this. So this is what it looks like. A cube map. It's very similar to like a skybox or a 360 photo, but it's made in a way to do reflection or cookie projection for lights. So it's also used in reflection probes. Hence, you can actually use your own reflections for objects as well too, or in a volume.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually how they faked reflections in the past as well too, in older games. Though this can also be used, as you can see, it has the alpha and the transparent areas, and the areas that are not transparent is where it gets shown out here. And this you can just drag and drop into each one of these little cookie slots here, and you have yourself a 3D cookie. Actually, there's another one I can bring out too before the stream ends. We can go inside as well too for this one. Actually, what do you think it will be for the Starry Night one?
Let's do that inside.
Yeah. So this one's also in the Aeneas Essentials under 3D models, our assets, 3D models, and space. I always find this really cool.
Oh, I remember when I first saw this, it was really neat.
Now
There's fruits.
Now,
I was going to say Fruix is running around like a madman. I love this projection so much.
So-
and it's accurate to the sky.
Yeah. Directly from NASA, they had like a website dedicated to the different constellations in the night sky, having all the different grid lines, the constellations, the regions of each constellation, and the actual 360 night sky, like Milky Way, almost skybox looking thing. They were all open source to around and mess around with, so it's like, I gotta make something like this. As I always liked astro globes as well too, so figured looks pretty neat on the visual too here.
It does look really cool.
Very nice.
On a note of random created lights, by the way, I know Aegis has seen this. I've actually just thought I bring this video in. If you come here, Aegis, you can show people this.
It loaded.
Yeah, we'll just press play on it. This is actually something that I made. I 3D printed like today and built. So,
Ooh.
yeah, it's a little LED light, which, as I say, you know, I actually have got this. I am actually going to make the same thing in Neos as well.
And you can use that same method that I did with the cube map.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, that would be easy. Just like map every single one of those texture things.
Yep.
We should just end the stream like this with this kind of lighting. Pretty interesting.
Well, we've got 2 big studio lights up here.
Oh yeah, that too.
I mean, if I go into smooth POV, we have 1 light up there, and then we got 1 light up there as well, which actually project down on us. You don't normally see them because we're in daytime.
Slow.
I love the slow camera transition. It's so cool. But yeah, I would just like to say, first and foremost, thank you everyone for actually coming along today and joining us here on our workshop. Thank you to Aegis and Rayuvi, as usual.
Yeah, hope you learned something.
Yeah. I was about to say, oh, he's there. I was wondering where he'd gone. Shouldn't you be in your space? Say bye-bye, Fruits.
As of note again, the world will be open for about an hour afterwards if you'd like to come in us and see the new elevator.
Yep. We'll find us someone who we can go watch. Oh, have we got? Is that a question? 60 minutes already? Yeah, it has been. It has been an hour
Indeed.
already. It does go quick when we get started on some of the better projects. And as I say, remember, we do. If something does go on longer, we will do 2-part episodes, and maybe we might go over the hour. Who knows? It all depends. Yeah.
I'm happy I covered the light tip. That was one of the beginner things we
Yes.
haven't covered.
Yes.
Either that or it was lost. One of the two.
No, we never covered it. We never
Okay,
covered
good.
lights. So, thank you everyone for coming, and we will catch you in a fortnight. And also, after that, there won't be any workshop again because I'm on vacation. I'm on vacation at the end of May. I'm going away for a convention.
Ooh, fun.
So, no, it won't be a fortnight. Anyway, thank you everyone, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.